On May 28, 2025, U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio announced that the United States would begin aggressively revoking visas for Chinese students, specifically targeting those with connections to the Chinese Communist Party, CCP, or those studying in critical fields. This announcement, made via a statement on X and a State Department press release titled, "New Visa Policies Put America First, Not China," marks a significant escalation in the Trump administration's approach to U.S. China relations, immigration policy, and higher education. The policy is part of a broader effort to address perceived national security threats posed by Chinese students in the U.S., particularly in relation to espionage, intellectual property theft, and the transfer of sensitive technologies. However, the move has sparked widespread controversy, drawing criticism from educators, students, and international observers, while also igniting debate about its economic, academic, and diplomatic consequences. This response will explore the background of Rubio's announcement, the specifics of the policy, the rationale provided by the Trump administration, the reactions from various stakeholders, the potential impact on U.S. universities and the economy, and the broader geopolitical context. It will also critically analyze the policy's implications, including its potential to undermine U.S. innovation, academic freedom, and international relations, while addressing the challenges of defining CCP connections and critical fields. Background and context: U.S. China relations and national security concerns. The U.S. and China have been engaged in a complex and increasingly tense relationship for decades, characterized by competition in trade, technology, and global influence. Since the early 2000s, concerns about China's growing economic and military power have led U.S. policymakers to scrutinize academic and cultural exchanges, particularly through programs like the Confucius Institutes and student visa programs. These concerns intensified during Donald Trump's first presidency, 2017 to 2021, when the administration launched initiatives like the China Initiative to counter alleged espionage and intellectual property theft by Chinese nationals in U.S. academic and research institutions. Marco Rubio, a longtime critic of the Chinese government, has been a prominent figure in this discourse. As a U.S. Senator, Rubio spearheaded efforts to close Confucius Institutes in Florida, citing their role in promoting Chinese government propaganda and facilitating espionage. His 2024 report, The World China Made, warned of China's control over strategic supply chains, including rare earth minerals critical to the U.S. tech industry. Rubio's appointment as Secretary of State in the second Trump administration, 2025-present, has amplified his influence, allowing him to shape U.S. foreign policy toward China with a focus on national security. The visa revocation policy announced in May 2025 reflects these long-standing concerns, particularly the fear that Chinese students in the U.S. could serve as conduits for the CCP to access sensitive technologies or conduct espionage. The policy also aligns with broader Trump administration priorities, including a hardline stance on immigration, scrutiny of elite academic institutions, and efforts to put America first in trade and security negotiations with China. Chinese students in the U.S. Chinese students represent a significant portion of the international student population in the United States. According to the Open Doors 2024 report, approximately 277,398 Chinese students were enrolled in U.S. higher education institutions during the 2023 to 2024 academic year, making China the second largest source of international students after India. These students contribute significantly to the U.S. economy, generating an estimated $43.8 billion in economic activity and supporting nearly 400,000 jobs during the 2023 to 2024 school year. They also play a critical role in research, particularly in STEM, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics fields, where their skills and expertise bolster U.S. innovation. However, the presence of Chinese students has been a double-edged sword for U.S. policymakers. While their contributions to academia and the economy are undeniable, concerns about their potential ties to the CCP have grown. The CCP, with over 99 million members as of 2023, is deeply integrated into Chinese society, including its education system. Many Chinese universities have affiliations with the CCP, and a significant portion of students, particularly in Beijing, apply for party membership during their undergraduate years. This pervasive influence complicates efforts to identify students with connections to the CCP, raising questions about the feasibility and fairness of Rubio's policy. Details of the visa revocation policy. Rubio's announcement on May 28, 2025, Rubio announced the visa revocation policy in a post on X, stating, "The U.S. will begin revoking visas of Chinese students, including those with connections to the Chinese Communist Party or studying in critical fields." A subsequent State Department press release elaborated that the U.S. State Department, under President Trump's leadership, would work with the Department of Homeland Security to aggressively revoke these visas. The policy also includes plans to revise visa criteria to enhance scrutiny of all future visa applications from the People's Republic of China and Hong Kong. The announcement did not specify the number of students affected or provide detailed criteria for identifying those with CCP connections or studying in critical fields. However, it emphasized a focus on national security, with Rubio and other officials citing concerns about the CCP's exploitation of U.S. universities for espionage and technology transfer. The lack of clarity on critical fields and CCP connections has fueled uncertainty and anxiety. Among Chinese students, university administrators, and educators, critical fields and CCP connections. While Rubio's statement did not define critical fields, the term likely refers to disciplines such as the physical sciences, engineering, artificial intelligence, and other areas with potential military or dual-use applications. In recent years, U.S. officials have expressed concerns about Chinese students accessing sensitive technologies that could benefit China's military-industrial complex. For example, during Trump's first term, a ban was introduced to prevent graduates from Chinese universities with military ties from obtaining U.S. visas for STEM research. The definition of connections to the Chinese Communist Party is equally vague. With 99 million CCP members and 74 million members of the Communist Youth League, many Chinese students could be implicated by association, such as having parents or relatives who are party members or attending universities with CCP affiliations. A 2016 study noted that up to 75% of university students in Beijing apply for CCP membership, often for career or social advancement rather than ideological commitment. This broad reach of the CCP in Chinese society raises concerns that the policy could affect a significant portion of the 277,000 Chinese students in the U.S., even those with tenuous or indirect ties to the party. Implementation and related actions. The visa revocation policy is part of a broader set of actions targeting international students. On the same day as Rubio's announcement, the State Department issued a cable instructing U.S. embassies and consulates to halt interview appointments for student and exchange visas, F, M, and J categories, as part of an expansion of social media screening and vetting. This move suggests a comprehensive overhaul of the visa process, with increased scrutiny of applicants' online activities and backgrounds. Additionally, the Trump administration has taken other steps to limit international student enrollment. For example, the Department of Homeland Security attempted to revoke Harvard University's certification to enroll foreign students, citing allegations of anti-Semitism and coordination with the CCP. Although a federal judge temporarily blocked this move, it underscores the administration's focus on elite institutions, which are seen as hubs for international students and potential security risks. Rationale and justifications. National security concerns. The primary justification for Rubio's policy is national security. The Trump administration argues that Chinese students, particularly those in STEM fields, pose a risk of espionage and intellectual property theft. John Molinar, chairman of the House Select Committee on the Chinese Communist Party, stated in a March 2025 letter to U.S. universities that the CCP has established a systematic pipeline to embed researchers in U.S. institutions, providing them access to sensitive technologies with dual-use military applications. This concern is echoed by other officials, such as Florida Attorney General Ashley Moody, who cited a Stanford University report alleging CCP espionage on U.S. campuses. the administration also points to specific cases, such as alleged coordination between Harvard and Chinese scholars or the training of members of the Xinjiang Production and Construction Corps, a Chinese paramilitary group. These claims, while often lacking detailed evidence, fuel the narrative that Chinese students are a conduit for the CCP to undermine U.S. interests. Trade and geopolitical leverage. Rubio's announcement coincides with heightened U.S. China trade tensions, particularly over rare earth minerals and magnets critical to the tech industry. Sources reported to Axios that the policy was partly motivated by China's use of these minerals as a negotiating tool in trade talks. President Trump's May 31, 2025, Truth Social post accused China of violating trade agreements, suggesting that the visa revocations were a retaliatory measure to pressure Beijing. By targeting Chinese students, including those from elite CCP families, the administration aims to send a message to China's leadership, many of whom have sent their children to study in the U.S., including Xi Jinping's daughter, Xi Mingzi, who reportedly attended Harvard under a pseudonym. Political and ideological messaging. The policy also aligns with the Trump administration's broader political agenda, which emphasizes America First policies and skepticism of elite institutions. Trump has criticized universities like Harvard for admitting too many international students, 27.6% of Harvard's enrollment in 2024 to 2025, and proposed capping international student levels at 15%. The visa revocations serve as a symbolic gesture to appeal to the administration's base, as evidenced by enthusiastic support from far-right activists like Laura Loomer, who called for the deportation of Xi Jinping's daughter. Reactions and criticisms. Chinese government response. China's foreign ministry swiftly condemned Rubio's announcement, with spokesperson Mao Ning calling it a politically motivated and discriminatory move that undermines U.S. claims of freedom and openness. Beijing lodged a formal protest with Washington, arguing that the policy would damage the U.S.'s international image and credibility. Chinese students in Beijing expressed concerns about the future of U.S. China educational exchanges, with some drawing parallels to the Chinese Exclusion Act of the 1880s, as noted by a Johns Hopkins student identified as Li Qin. U.S. Academic and industry concerns. U.S. Universities, educators, and industry leaders have expressed alarm over the policy's potential to disrupt academic research and economic contributions. Rosie Levine, executive director of the U.S. China Education Trust, warned that the policy would have a chilling effect on Chinese students choosing the U.S. as a study destination, potentially affecting all 277,000 Chinese students due to the broad reach of the CCP in China. Stephen Orlins, president of the National Committee on U.S. China Relations, highlighted the contributions of Chinese students to Silicon Valley and U.S. entrepreneurship, arguing that revoking their visas would cut off the pipeline of talent and cause long-term damage to U.S. innovation. Universities, which rely on international students for revenue, as they often pay full tuition, face financial risks. The $43.8 billion economic contribution from international students in 2023 to 2024 underscores their importance to the higher education sector. Institutions like Northeastern University, with over 20,000 international students, have begun developing contingency plans to address visa delays and revocations. Student perspectives. Chinese students in the U.S. have voiced fear and disillusionment. A PhD student at a New Jersey university, speaking anonymously to NBC News, expressed disappointment that the U.S., seen as a beacon of freedom and democracy, was adopting policies reminiscent of China's restrictive regime. The uncertainty surrounding what constitutes a CCP connection, or a critical field, has left many students scrambling to secure their futures, with some reconsidering their decision to study in the U.S. Political and public sentiment. The policy has polarized public opinion, as reflected in posts on X. Supporters, particularly from the MAGA, Make America Great Again, movement, celebrated Rubio's announcement as a necessary step to protect national security and curb CCP influence. Posts from users like @NixOrder and @GuntherEagleman expressed enthusiasm, with calls to kick them all out and take our country back. Conversely, critics, including Chinese American lawmakers and the Congressional Asian Pacific American Caucus, condemned the policy as xenophobic and wrong, arguing that it unfairly targets students based on national origin without evidence of wrongdoing. Implications for U.S. universities and the economy. Academic impact. The visa revocation policy threatens to disrupt U.S. universities' research capabilities, particularly in STEM fields, where Chinese students make significant contributions. The loss of these students could weaken the U.S.'s position as a global leader in scientific innovation, as noted by human rights researcher Yaqi Wang. Universities like Harvard, which have faced additional scrutiny from the Trump administration, may struggle to maintain their research output and international reputation. Economic consequences. The economic impact of the policy could be substantial. International students, including those from China, contribute billions to the U.S. economy through tuition, housing, and other expenses. A significant reduction in Chinese student enrollment could strain university budgets, particularly at institutions reliant on full tuition-paying international students to subsidize financial aid for domestic students. The broader economic ripple effect could also affect jobs supported by international student spending. Geopolitical ramifications. The policy risks escalating tensions with China, potentially prompting retaliatory measures such as restrictions on American students or scholars in China. It could also diminish the U.S.'s soft power by reducing its appeal as a global education hub. For decades, Chinese students educated in the U.S. have returned to China with a deeper understanding of American values, fostering cultural and economic ties. Curtailing this exchange could weaken these connections, as noted by Zichen Wang of the Center for China and Globalization. Critical analysis. Feasibility and fairness. The lack of clear definitions for CCP connections and critical fields raises significant concerns about the policy's implementation. The pervasive influence of the CCP in Chinese society means that many students could be unfairly targeted based on familial or institutional affiliations rather than evidence of espionage or wrongdoing. This broad-brush approach risks alienating innocent students and undermining the principles of fairness and due process that the U.S. claims to uphold. National security versus innovation. While national security concerns are valid, the policy's focus on Chinese students overlooks their contributions to U.S. innovation. Silicon Valley, for example, has benefited immensely from Chinese graduates who have stayed in the U.S. to work in tech industries. The policy's emphasis on short-term security gains may come at the expense of long-term technological competitiveness, as other countries like Canada and Australia could attract Chinese talent deterred by U.S. restrictions. Political motivations. The timing of Rubio's announcement, amid stalled U.S. China trade talks and domestic political pressures, suggests that the policy may be as much about political signaling as national security. The Trump administration's focus on elite institutions like Harvard and its rhetoric about putting America first resonate with its political base but may oversimplify the complex dynamics of U.S. China academic exchanges. Historical parallels. Critics, including Chinese students, have drawn parallels between Rubio's policy and historical discriminatory measures like the Chinese Exclusion Act. While the contexts differ, the comparison highlights concerns about xenophobia and the stigmatization of an entire national group. The policy's broad scope and lack of transparency could fuel perceptions of anti-Chinese sentiment, further straining U.S.-China relations. Conclusion. Marco Rubio's announcement to revoke visas for Chinese students connected to the CCP or studying in critical fields represents a bold and controversial move by the Trump administration. Framed as a national security measure, the policy reflects long-standing concerns about Chinese espionage and technology transfer but risks significant academic, economic, and diplomatic consequences. The lack of clarity on implementation, combined with